The film begins after an important meeting attended by world leaders, during which the Secretary General of the United Nations issued an important announcement. The announcement stated that the planet Earth is facing an environmental collapse due to climate change, leading to shortages of food, water, and resources worldwide. The final solution agreed upon by the leaders was to close borders between countries, giving each country only 1 year to reduce its population by 20%. We see a group of people standing in a long queue to collect their share of water. Everyone was holding umbrellas to protect themselves from ultraviolet rays. At the same time, we see organized government personnel transporting the body of a deceased person from his home. At this moment, a man named Bob appears and enters the deceased's house, handing his daughter an envelope containing money. Here, we learn that the government has imposed a program called Sacrifice for the Homeland, which forces families to sacrifice one of their members to reduce the population and face the crisis. The government pays a sum of money to each family that sacrifices a member. We see Yusuf and Malik in their car, observing what is happening. They seem dissatisfied with the government's treatment of the people. Yusuf was driving the car, and both he and Malik were annoyed by the advertisements spread across the streets, encouraging people to volunteer for the sacrifice program. Malik got angry and threw his coffee at these ads. Later, Yusuf and Malik arrived at the mansion of a man named Charles, who turned out to be the owner of a furniture moving company. Yusuf and Malik entered the mansion, took the piano, and went upstairs. The TV was on, showing a program featuring a man named Jared, who was discussing the crisis and announced his support for the Sacrifice for the Homeland program, saying it was a national duty for every family in society. Jared encouraged families to offer their members for sacrifice, especially since their country was far behind in reducing its population compared to other nations. Malik became furious at Jared's words and cursed him loudly. Charles, Jared's father, overheard, but Malik quickly apologized. Here, we learned that Charles was a famous broadcaster but had retired. Charles left them and went to his wife, Dawn, in the kitchen. Dawn was a renowned chef and was preparing food because they were hosting their children for lunch. Dawn was very sad because Charles had decided that he and Dawn would sacrifice themselves in the Sacrifice for the Homeland program. Charles was trying to reassure her, explaining that they were doing this for their children to live a better life. At this moment, Charles saw on the news that his daughter, Rachel, was facing heavy criticism and might be prosecuted because she worked as an executive director for a pharmaceutical company. This company had produced a drug that caused severe side effects. At the same time, Jared arrived at the mansion, and before entering, his wife called to scold him. The reason was that Jared had said on the program that he was willing to sacrifice his 10-year-old son for the homeland. Jared tried to explain that the host had twisted his words, but his wife said their son was devastated and afraid of him. Jared apologized and asked her to give him the phone to talk to his son and explain the truth. But his wife said their son was too scared to talk to him. She asked him not to return home until their son calmed down and forgot what had happened. At this time, Noah, Jared's brother, was standing outside the mansion under a tree. He was afraid to face his family. He called his girlfriend, Grace, and told her he was very nervous. Grace advised him that if he wasn't ready to face his family, it would be better not to attend the lunch and wait for another time when he was more prepared to deal with them. Noah agreed and rode with his sister, Ashley, in her car. He asked her if she knew why their father wanted them. Ashley replied that she didn't know. Noah and Ashley were very close, so Noah told her that he loved his girlfriend Grace and planned to marry her. Ashley was very happy for him, especially when she learned that Grace had helped Noah overcome his addiction. After arriving at the mansion, Charles greeted and hugged them. Once they sat at the table, Dawn served them food. Noah asked her about her restaurant, but he was deeply saddened when she told him it had burned down. Charles also stood up and apologized to his children, saying he regretted the time he had spent away from them. Suddenly, Charles announced that he and Doan would sacrifice themselves for the homeland. Rachel objected and asked to go to the office room. Charles told his children that he and Doan wanted to die among them and that they were doing this to protect them from the sacrifice program. Jared objected to his father's decision, saying the government would never ask him to sacrifice a family member because the government doesn't do that to the rich and powerful like them. Jared asked Charles to reconsider, but Charles refused, saying he didn't want to risk their future. Ashley asked Doan why she agreed to Charles's proposal. Doan told her that she and Charles were public figures and would set an example to encourage people to sacrifice. Ashley wasn't convinced and told her father that he did this for his reputation and to elevate the family's name. She said he had lost hope in his children and that none of them had become as successful and famous as him. Even Jared, whom he had helped enter the media industry, had become a failure and couldn't win people's love. Noah also got angry at his father and said he had just apologized for not spending enough time with them. Noah lost control because he couldn't imagine his parents dying. Doan screamed at Noah and asked him to calm down, so Noah stayed silent. Doan told them they would continue talking while eating dessert, then went to the kitchen to prepare it. Noah tried to convince his father to change his mind, telling him that the government was manipulating the numbers. They learned that the government had already reached the required population reduction, but saw it as an opportunity to eliminate certain groups of people. The government pays $250,000 for each individual who sacrifices themselves. Jared got angry at Noah's words and said the government wouldn't do that. Charles told him to stop lying and said he had been meeting with government officials for 30 years, and none of them told the truth to the public. He said the government's statements were causing strife between the people and immigrants, especially when they announced that the cause of climate change was Asia and Africa. Citizens burned down immigrants' homes and businesses, including Dawn's restaurant, because she was of Asian descent. Charles said the government was trying to eliminate immigrants under the guise of the sacrifice for the homeland program. Ashley cut off the conversation and changed the subject, telling them that Noah loved a girl named Grace and wanted to marry her. Noah didn't want Ashley to bring up this topic because he was afraid of his father's reaction. Noah told them that Grace had overcome her addiction 10 years ago and had also helped him overcome his. He said Grace was the director of a large theater and he worked there as a pianist. Charles blessed his son and wished him happiness in his life. After that, he told them he would go help Doan in the kitchen, but he returned carrying a letter from her. He was shocked because Doan said she wouldn't be able to sacrifice herself and would flee to a distant place where no one would see her again. Everyone was shocked by what had happened, and Charles felt guilty for forcing her into this decision when she had only agreed to please him. At that moment, they heard a knock on the door, and Bob had come to carry out the death procedures for Charles and Doan. They told him Doan wasn't there and asked if the procedure could be postponed until they found her. Bob asked to speak with Charles alone, so he took him to the office. There, Bob presented the papers to Charles and asked him to sign them. When Charles read the papers, he became furious but completed the procedures without us knowing what was written in them. Afterward, they placed Charles in his bed, surrounded by his children. Noah played a sad melody on the piano, and Charles apologized to his children, asking them to take care of themselves. Bob injected Charles with a sedative, then a second injection containing poison. While transporting Charles's body, Bob told Jared and his siblings that he needed a second body because he had been called to take 2 bodies from their family. Noah got angry and wanted to hit him, but soldiers entered the house and pointed their guns at him. Bob told Noah and his siblings that they had 2 hours to decide who among them would die. Jared used his connections and immediately called the authorities, but Bob surprised him by saying they had jammed all phone and internet signals. He told them he would wait in his car until they decided who would die. Jared and his siblings asked Bob to find Doan and kill her, so he would get the 2 bodies he needed. They remained in this state for 2 hours. Afterward, Noah asked about the papers his father had signed. Bob told him that his father had wanted the death procedures but changed his mind when he learned that all his assets would be seized and he would be imprisoned for life. Additionally, his name would be added to the list of cowards who abandoned their duty to the homeland. Bob distributed documents containing damaging information about each of them to help them decide to sacrifice themselves. He told Jared that he was a selfish person and that the woman he was cheating on his wife with was also cheating on him with many men. Then, Bob turned to Rachel and told her that her reputation was very bad and she might be imprisoned, in addition to her daughter never being proud of her. Rachel got angry and hit him, so Bob decided to leave them alone to make their decision. He told them that if the 2 hours ended without a decision, he would return and choose one of them himself. Noah and his siblings remained silent. Jared suggested that Noah should be the one to die because he was their adopted brother and had been given a great opportunity to live a good life, but wasted it when he became an addict. He told them that he had hit a woman with his car and killed her while under the influence of drugs. Ashley objected to Jared's words and argued with him. Noah told them that he had come today to apologize to them, and they learned that he had overcome his addiction and become a better person. Rachel told them she wasn't ready to die and pulled out a knife, attacking Noah to kill him. Noah was wounded in the chest, but the knife fell from Rachel's hand in front of Ashley. Rachel tried to convince Ashley that Noah should die because it would increase each of their shares of their father's inheritance, especially since Noah had already received his share when their father paid $3 million in compensation to the family of the woman Noah had killed to protect him from prison. Ashley changed her mind and threw the knife away. Rachel and Jared attacked Noah again, but Noah moved quickly and fought them off. He ran to a room in the house and locked the door behind him. When Jared entered, Noah hit him with a piece of wood. When Rachel entered, Noah stabbed her in the neck with a fork but refused to kill her. Noah left the room and hit Jared again but refused to kill him as well. Ashley attacked Noah from behind and hit him on the head, causing him to fall to the ground. After that, they tied Noah up and gathered around him, each holding a knife to kill him. At that moment, they heard a voice calling for Noah outside the house. They all went out and saw Grace, Noah's girlfriend, standing in front of the house taking pictures with her car. She asked about Noah, but the soldiers told her to stay away from the house. Grace refused and wanted to make sure Noah was okay. Jared and his siblings told her Noah was fine and asked her to call for help to save them from Bob. One of Bob's soldiers shot Grace and killed her. Rachel told Bob that he now had 2 bodies, but Bob apologized and told her he needed a second body from their family. Rachel and her siblings entered the house, but she was shocked to discover that the knives were missing and Noah was gone. At that moment, Noah turned off all the lights in the house. Everyone rushed to the kitchen and each grabbed something to defend themselves. They began searching for Noah inside the house, but Ashley found him in front of her, holding a knife. Noah hit her but didn't kill her. After that, he hit Jared and knocked him to the ground, then attacked Rachel and stabbed her in the face. He returned to Ashley, but she started talking to him and said she would sacrifice herself. Noah agreed and left Ashley. Jared told them that he would be the one to sacrifice himself because he was a selfish person who had lived his whole life thinking only of himself. Noah told them that none of them would die and that he had a plan to save them all. Ashley, who was injured, lost consciousness from the pain. Time passed and the 2 hours were up. Bob entered to see what Noah and his siblings would do. Ashley's body was lying on the floor. Bob thanked them for cooperating with him and following his orders. He asked one of his men to bring something to carry Ashley's body, but Ashley stabbed Bob's assistant in the leg. Noah grabbed a knife and held it to Bob's neck. At that moment, Bob's men entered and pointed their guns at Noah and his siblings. Noah demanded they lower their weapons or he would kill Bob. They complied, and Jared took all their weapons. Unfortunately, at that moment, Ashley died from her injuries. Bob said the problem was solved, but Jared hit him, and Bob lost consciousness. Bob woke up to find himself tied to a bed, with all his men also tied up. Bob was surprised to see the body of the soldier who had killed Grace, and realized that Noah had killed her to avenge his girlfriend. Bob was even more terrified when he saw Noah preparing to inject him with poison. He told them they had found Dawn and that she was at the main headquarters. Noah reconsidered killing Bob. Later, we see Noah playing the piano at a theater. Rachel, her daughter Maya, Jared, and his son were sitting among the audience. Dawn was sitting beside them, and they were all enjoying Noah's performance. At that moment, the weekly bulletin for volunteers appeared, and we learned that Ashley and Grace had sacrificed themselves. Bob appeared and said that Ashley and Grace were a great example of sacrifice for the homeland. And that was the end of the film.